Nothing in this podcast is meant for medical advice. Please discuss your own healthcare with your healthcare providers. Thank you. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Midlife is not a crisis, it's a catalyst to your best life. Join me each week for a dose of mental, physical, and spiritual health, life, grief, adventure, and opportunity. It's time to flip the record over. Welcome to your B-side, your midlife metamorphosis, with me, your host, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Today, I'm going to talk about soccer drills and arpeggios and what they have to do with preparing you for luck. So last year, I was driving carpool for my son and his friends who he attended school with. And I asked the teenager, the high schooler in the car, how his tennis was going, because I knew that he had just joined the JV varsity team for tennis. And he said, it's boring. All we do is hit the ball back and forth across the net and do drills. And I kind of thought, well, isn't that the point of tennis, that you hit the ball back and forth across the net? That's tennis, right? And he made the point that he wasn't allowed to play in a lot of matches at that point because of his position on the team, that he was a new member. They had these other kids that were playing the matches. And he said, I think I'm going to ask my parents if I can quit tennis and I can start playing volleyball. And I said to him something of, well, isn't volleyball the same thing? A little more people, different ball. You don't use a racket, you use your hands. And you'd probably just be hitting the ball back and forth across the net, doing a lot of drills for a while. And I don't know the politics of your volleyball team, so I don't know if you'd get to play in a match or not. And he said, yeah, maybe. And I remember encouraging him to stick it out. I dropped the kids off and I could hear them chatting, and I could hear my son, who's a soccer player, and his other buddy, who is also a soccer player, talking to the older kid, the high schooler, and talking to him and saying, hey, we do soccer drills all the time and they're boring. And sometimes we're sitting on the bench and we don't get to play in games very much, but we're always glad we did all those drills. And I can hear this going on as they're walking into the school. As I was driving home, one of my favorite songs on the radio came on, and it's a song I actually play on piano. And the more I was driving home, the more I started to feel sick to my stomach. And it was coming up into my stomach, up into my chest, like tightening my chest and like grasping onto my throat. And I felt like I was going to throw up. And I pulled in the driveway. I put the car in park and I sat there listening to this. It was a piano piece on the radio. And I was like, what in the fuck is going on right now? Why am I having this reaction? And it was almost that same reaction I would get when I would have stage fright from playing piano. And I just sat with it for a minute and I listened to the song, and then I turned the radio off and I sat in the car and took a few deep breaths. And here's what I realized. I had been giving this kid advice about, sticking it out and doing your drills and hitting the ball back and forth. And the other two kids in the car had been, giving this example of their soccer drills and, how they impact games later, and you just got to do it. And I realized that all the years that I had spent with so much stage fright and so much fear and so much imposter syndrome and so much fear that I'm terrible artist, I'm a terrible pianist, I can't do it right, actually made me stop doing my own drills on piano. Does that make sense? That I would sit down and I could pretty much, I think most classical pianists, especially if you make it to a certain level, I played classical piano in college, and there's these composers and these pieces that your piano teachers and the piano department kind of pick out for you, and they're kind of all the same ones, right? They're the same composers, and you might do Opus 9 number 2, or you might do Opus 9 number 1, right? But there's kind of this repertoire that you're all doing. You're doing a Baroque piece, a romantic piece. You're doing a modern piece. You're doing a minimalist piece. You're doing you know, maybe you're doing a ragtime piece to get your syncopation in, right? And so I have this repertoire of piano pieces that I can pretty much bust out anywhere. I can be walking past a street piano or a mall piano, or, when people in my life say, "Hey, play us something," I'll play one of those pieces. Okay. On the radio that day was one of my favorite ones, and it was from Eric Satie. And this is a piece that I can play anywhere at any time, blindfolded. It's one of those. And I realized that my own fear of creating my own piano music and my own fear of playing music with other people, that I was using this repertoire as a crutch. And it made me sick in that moment, because I sat there giving this carpool, this life advice that I wasn't following myself. And I walked in the house and I'm like, okay, motherfucker. All right, we're going to do this. And I sat down at my piano and I just started playing arpeggios. I just started in key of C. And I just started playing arpeggios, and then I changed to A minor, and then I changed, and I just started going through relative majors and relative minors on the piano, just arpeggios, 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 and just working through every last key I could remember. I was like, all right. And then I started doing some Hannons. If you've been a classical pianist, you played your Hannons. Now, I hate Hannons, but I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do my drills. I'm going to do my soccer drills, my piano drills. And then I started getting into my 7 chords, and I was doing my inchworm chords. Anyone who's done any jazz piano knows what inchworm chords are. Okay. You're basically going between 2, 5, and 7 chords. And the way that you do it is it feels like an inchworm with your finger placement. And I realized something, that I had let my own lack of confidence prevent me from doing the very thing that gives you confidence. Does that make sense? That the very thing that gives you confidence is consistency and routine, and not the fun stuff, right? That all those years of preparing for piano performance, I had to do so many drills. And my own lack of confidence in creating my own music, or my own insecurities about my own musicianship, or had then as an adult, post-college, as a grown-ass woman in midlife, I had stopped doing the very thing that I will tell everyone to do. Hey, this is Dr. Amy Lindsey, your host of Welcome to Your B-Side, your Midlife Metamorphosis YouTube channel and podcast. If you want to be more involved with my B-Side community, you can join on School. That's SKOOL. You can join my school community. Look me up, Dr. Amy Lindsey. Welcome to your B-Side, and request to join. What is the lesson in this? Well, I was reminded of this just the other day. I remembered this entire story, because since then, yes, I have been religiously doing composing drills and exercises. I have been doing my arpeggios. I have been doing my inchworm chords. I have been practicing all kinds of other chords, and the ease and the flow of which my playing happens, and the ease and the flow of composing has just really skyrocketed, and my confidence has therefore skyrocketed. Yeah. Okay. So the other day, my son says to me, he's sitting in the kitchen eating a yogurt, and he says, "You know what, Mom? You know what you could do?" And he didn't mean me. He meant people, like you, general you. He said, "You know what you could do? You could be a bench player." So we've been living in France, and he's been playing for the PSG Academy and the U15 team here. And so he's like, his whole life is like soccer. And a lot of these kids talk about what it might be to go pro, and they have these conversations. So that's the context. So it turns out his soccer drills back in Seattle helped him get to France. So he says to me with his little yogurt, he says, "You know what you could do, Mom? You could be on a professional team, and you could be a bench player. You could be someone who's often sitting on the bench, who's warming up the starting A team, or who is, maybe a sub, maybe gets, 5 or 10 minutes in a match, sometimes, not all the time, but is often sitting on the bench, but you are practicing and training with the team. So you're doing all your drills, you're doing all the things, and you're sitting on the bench and you're in a big match. Like it could be World Cup, it could be the Euro Championships, it could be some big, huge match, and you're in the semifinals or the finals, and you're a bench player, and something can happen. Anything can happen, Mom. Did you know that? Anything can happen. I love this kid. And he said someone could get injured. Somebody could have been red carded in another game, and so they couldn't play in that match. Someone could have be fouling too much and the coach needs to pull them out so they don't get a red card. Maybe someone's just not playing well. They're having a bad day. And you could get subbed in, he says. You get subbed in and you're only playing for 5 minutes and you score a game-winning goal. He said, Mom, your whole life would change. Your whole life would change in just 5 minutes. He said, you score that goal and then everyone suddenly knows who you are. Suddenly you have all these followers on social media. He said, suddenly you can get traded to a team and be a starter on another team. Suddenly, maybe the current team, they offer you a better contract and maybe now you're a starter. He said, your whole life can change in 5 minutes. Okay. First of all, I love this kid so much. I'm so proud of him for acknowledging this. And I just continued this conversation with him. And I said, yes, you're absolutely right. That could totally happen. That is absolutely a possibility. But you know what, kiddo? And I know it's not just those 5 minutes, right? And he goes, yeah, no, it's all the time you spent rehearsing. I'm an artist, so I think rehearsing, training. That's the athletic version of rehearsing. So he said, it's all the time you spent training. I said, exactly. It is all the minutes and all the hours and all the days and all the weeks and all the years that you've been training, that you've been willing to make mistakes and take risks and to grow and to keep going. And you are prepared. You're prepared for luck. You are prepared for opportunity. You're prepared for those 5 minutes that change your life. And there's so much that all of us can learn from, conversations with middle school and high school kids in your carpool. I often think about how much advice, like life advice, I'm doling out to my kid and their friends, and I'm trying to be this enlightened, smart adult that's, encouraging them. And then I have to turn that shit on myself. We got to turn that mirror on ourselves. What are we doing in midlife as grown-ass adults? And I say this with all the love in my heart because I think sometimes we settle. We settle in midlife. We think, oh, we're never going to be a professional soccer player. I'm definitely I'm 50 years old and that was never my dream, right? I know for sure I am not going to be a professional soccer player. But think about when you flip the record over to your B-side. So I've been talking about our B-side. It's the title of the podcast. It's this metaphor I came up with maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was trying to describe what it is about midlife and what it is about not just the menopausal, andropausal hormone transitions, but it's almost like a spiritual awakening because you're in this physical and mental health transition that you step into a spiritual health transition. When you flip the record over to your B side, that's the side you can put the needle on that first track, the beginning of side B, right? And you can take those risks and be more vulnerable and create the life you want on your B side. So for me personally, for instance, doing this podcast is a new thing for me to do. Getting back to basics with some of my piano training and starting to compose music and starting to rebuild confidence in myself and my own identity as an artist and a musician. And if you think about it, we have so much life left. We have so much life left that we could build on soccer drills and arpeggios as an example. What are your soccer drills and arpeggios? What can you build on now, starting now? Whether you're 40 years old, 45, 50, 55, 60, we still, if we're lucky, still have so much life left. We still might have 30 or 40 or 50 years left. What could you do with that? What new practice or maybe old practice could you dust off and start again? You still have plenty of time to start those daily routines and drills towards something you've always wanted to do, and it will pay off. You will be prepared for luck. You'll be prepared for that moment, that 5 minutes that might change and transform your life, even still on your B-side. This is Dr. Amy Lindsey on Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis. I hope you have a great week. And I hope you all go practice your soccer drills and your arpeggios or whatever that is for you. This has been another episode of Welcome to Your B-Side, your midlife metamorphosis with Dr. Amy Lindsey. Be sure to follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.